This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Give Cleola a round of applause. Before we introduce our panelists, and as always, it's an honor to be here, do want to acknowledge the great president of this organization, Terri Melvin. Give him a round of applause. The entire leadership team here at CBTU, give them a round of applause. My dear brother, Apollos Baker, and he and I started talking about doing something like this with these unions over a year ago. Give Apollos a round of applause for helping to facilitate this. And presumably, I know Mr. Lucy has been joining us remotely. Thank goodness for technology. Bill, if you're watching, we love you. We miss you. We know you're with us, and we do all this for you. Give Bill Lucy a round of applause so he can hear this. I'm just going to be a minister for a minute here, but not really a minister. I just want to say this. Cleola is right. And as we look at the history of this great organization and where it's come from over the past 51 years, if we consider that Dr. King gave his life, was crucified upon the cross himself in Memphis, for the formation of an African-American union, essentially a black union there in Memphis. If he gave his life in that cause, Willie, then everything we do now and we've done since then is continuing his life and legacy. And therefore, all of us here in CBTU are the manifestation of his resurrection. Amen? So he lives on through us. And I want to just say that that's how sacred being here is to me, and how even more sacred the work each and every one of you does every day. All right? I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And what Bill Lucy continues to impart to us and what he has helped us do. So we start, CBTU on paper, 1972, probably really started in 1968, that week in Memphis. Amen? So we continue this work. So again, I'm thankful to be here and glad to be here. I want to introduce our panelists here, two very esteemed people. And this is again important and historic because we're marrying all of our unions and where we have leadership. And it's also interesting that and historic that so many of our unions, I know Fred Redmond's on his way in town, we have leadership everywhere now. And that says a lot. First of all, I'm going to introduce to my immediate left my dear friend Terri Carmichael-Jackson. She is the executive director of the Women's National Basketball Players Association. She helped form the WNBA's Board of Advocates, and she also helped to launch a joint social justice council, the very first of its kind, with players and league team executives to collaboratively work and advance player activism. Prior to that, she was at the NCAA. She is a fellow Georgetown alum twice, both undergrad and the Georgetown Law School. We were in school together. We've known each other since we were teenagers. But she is also Jaren Jackson Jr., the NBA Defensive Player of the Year's mom, who plays for the Memphis Grizzlies. And watch this too, CBTU. Jaren Jackson Jr., her son, was recently elected to the leadership of the National Basketball Players Association. So it runs in the family, Clay. Clay, look, see this? So wonderful. Let's have another round for Terri. So glad she's here. Also to her left is our dear brother. He is David Foster of the National Basketball Players Association. Give him a round of applause. And he was at one point named to Sports Business Journal's 40 Under 40, as well as the National Bar Association's 40 Under 40. And so he addresses many of the issues that our young players are dealing with today. He's a former prosecutor. We're happy to have David here as well. Give him a round of applause. Let me also mention, obviously a lot of our work is collective bargaining. He was a part of the team that negotiated the most recent collective bargaining agreement in the National Basketball Players Association. So we thank him for that as well. We also had invited two of the other major sports, professional football and professional baseball. Tony Clark of the Major League Baseball Players Association. And I'll be very honest with you, we've lost a lot of ground in Major League Baseball in terms of our representation on the field. Amen? But isn't it interesting that the leadership of the union is still African American? That says something. Both Tony Clark and DeMaurice of the NFL he could not be, they both are in Amsterdam for the World Players Association meetings. DeMaurice of the NFL was also going to join us, but they wanted to be here, but we thank them for their consideration, and next time we'll have them. But just to begin to have this dialogue, I think is important. No, just to even have them in the conversation as we try to bring all of us together. One other thing, speaking of the NFL, I'd be remiss, and Clay, I'm sure you appreciate what I'm about to say, because we always want to lift up families that we're concerned about. They're here, the work they do around social justice is important. There's an issue and a case that has not gotten as much publicity as it deserves. And it was brought to my attention more so in person yesterday, and I'm bringing it up because we're in New Orleans. Yesterday I was in Akron, and we marched for Jalen Walker, who was shot by the police 46 times. You're welcome to join us for the National March in D.C., June 27th. That's a plug. Other families came. One mother came from here, Sister Foster. Her son was Glenn Foster, whom the Alabama police killed. Glenn Foster played for the New Orleans Saints. So you can read about him and Google him, and she's trying to get the NFL and the NFLPA to be more involved in that case. The only reason she's not in New Orleans today is because they're actually marching in Alabama tomorrow, where the police killed him several years ago. So these things are ongoing. So we'll begin with that, because we're 3 years since George Floyd and the so-called reckoning. First of all, let me begin this way. Terri, I'll start with you. In your role in also the place where the WNBA Players Association finds itself, how do you envision your role, your organization's role in this continuum of history when it comes to African Americans and labor, and how that works to press forward for our justice as a people?
Well, I believe that we are going to figure pretty prominently in that role within the labor movement. What I have said is, I think the players' associations, I think the sports unions can be a part of this labor union and be a part of the resurgence of what it means to be in a union and what it means to be politically strong and socially strong. And I don't go back to 2020 in the moment of this so-called reckoning. I like the way you phrase that. I kind of go back. I've been in this role 7 years, and my very first moment on the job, there was the shootings in Minnesota, there were the shootings in Dallas, and I saw the players kind of coming together very quickly to talk about what they can do and how they could show up, and how it was so important for them to make a stand and to make a statement that this was going to be so important for their community. So I go all the way back then. And, I consider the WNBPA to be one of the more under-resourced unions out there. I mean, we've got 144 members. They don't get paid a lot of money. I'm working on that. I'm fighting for that, but they don't get paid a lot of money. So we don't sit on, a lot of resources. But what we do understand is what it means to be a union. And we do understand the collective voice. And we do understand the power of consensus. And when you have that, then you've got management's attention. When you've got 144 players who are saying, we want to wear Black Lives Matter shirts, we all want to wear them, we have all been talking about them, about these shirts, the importance of these shirts, and we want to do that, and you have the league saying, yeah, don't do that. No, we don't want you to do that. And then threatening to fine them. And the players, again, they're not making a lot of money, particularly then. They weren't making a lot of money. They've got a new CBA, but they weren't making a lot of money before then. And they said, in the face of fines, we are going to do this. We are Black and brown women. These are our young men. These are our children. And this is how we're going to show up. And so they went and bought their own shirts. And they had their statements made. They held, their media availability was all about the statements that they wanted to make about police brutality and police killings. And I was so inspired. I was so inspired because, again, they understood the power of the collective voice, and they came together very quickly. And yeah, they were fined. And I keep talking about this story. Yeah, I do. I think the league gets mad that I keep talking about this story. But I'm going to keep talking about this story because I'm not going to let history erase it. They were fined. And, it was a time in which I got a memo that each of the players would get about being fined because it was a violation of the uniform policy. And I would get a copy of the memo that they got telling them that they had violated the policy. Imagine how many times my phone was vibrating because they fined every single one of them. And it was ridiculous. And I begged them. I said, don't do this. Don't do this. But they did. And then a few days later, I think they heard about the members in David's union, the guys in the NBPA were actually coalescing, coming together and saying, we're going to pay your fines. And I think the league heard that and said, we're going to rescind them. But, so fast forward in this moment, we understand what it means to be a union. Like, we've been doing this for a minute. Back then, Black Lives Matter, Charlottesville, we've been doing this. In coming together to do the bubble. We were talking about getting the information we needed, to make smart, healthy decisions for ourselves, for our families, for our communities around the COVID vaccine. And we got to, I call it an A. We got 99% of our members vaccinated and talking about the importance of that and staying healthy. And then we moved to voting and completing the census. And look, these women are some badasses. I'm just going to tell you, it is a privilege to get to sit where I sit as their executive director in total servant leadership mode. And Mark, we talk about this all the time. You can't lead until you can serve. Well, I watched the women of the W flip the Senate, y'all. That's what they did. That's what they did. That's what they did, mobilizing around that vote around the elections in Georgia. So they flipped the Senate. And then what did they do just last year? Mobilized a global sports community to get one of their own, Brittany Griner, home. Yeah, so we will figure prominently in the labor movement, in the history of the labor movement. And it is women, no offense, guys, it is women, who are doing lots of the work, all of the work, who are doing lots of the work. And so I know we're going to have our place in history. And to be invited here, oh, you all don't know. I've been doing team meetings, and they're like, Terri, where you go from here? I'm going to New Orleans. What you got to do in New Orleans? And I said, well, I'm going to the Coalition of Black Trade. What? Really? So it's to be invited here, this is an affirmation of who we are.
Thank you, Terri. I'm pretty much going to pose the same question to you, David, and thanks a lot, Terry. But just as I do that, I do want to acknowledge someone whom we've lost recently who also kind of set some of the tone. Jim Brown took all of the athletes to meet with Muhammad Ali. And the story from that was that they went to be in solidarity with him. But the fact of the matter is they didn't really know what everything that was going on, so they had to meet with him first. And they had all been threatened. All the other, Kareem was there, Jim Brown, others, they had all been threatened by their respective leagues. But once they got to see Muhammad Ali, he convinced them that they needed to stand with him, and they did. So that is kind of, I would think, continuing in that tradition. Talk about the NBPA and why you all are called to, as the NBPA, to be involved in this tradition and this movement.
Yep. First, I want to say it's an honor to be here. As Terri said, this is giving me life, sitting in front of you and feeling the energy and knowing that there are these other powerful unions and union members out there. I think a lot of times for us, we're in our own little tunnel vision, like we're focused on these players, on these athletes, making sure they're okay, and we don't see all of you in the collective sense. So I just want to say thank you. It's an honor to be here, and this is going to be very beneficial to me going back to my membership. Now, I will agree with Terri that the women have been leading the charge on social justice, on voting rights. The men oftentimes, because of their status, they get more of the front page news and the accolades. But the W women have been leading from day one. So all credit goes to them. And I think, look, every once in a while, women do have to kind of nudge the men along. That happens in life too, and we appreciate that. And the men we're ready and we're moving forward. And this social justice movement matters to these guys. It matters tremendously. I mean, they're parts of the community, right? They come from our hometowns. They didn't forget. They have experienced discrimination. Their family members have, and as our members, and they make sure we know that it's important to them, right? So whenever there are major issues, they always come to us and they ask, well, what can be done? What can we do? And I think it's meetings like this that are helpful, because a lot of times there's the energy and the passion, but like when you get down to the precise action point, right, what actually is needed, that's where sometimes we need more collective thought. Right? Because if I'm in New York and there is an issue in Detroit and it's a local issue and the players want to know what to do, it helps if we have union people on the ground to tell us, here's precisely what we need. Right? That makes a huge difference. What also helps, and what also the players, like I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't ever want to be just looked at as someone that's going to write a check. Right? They don't like that. They're like, you can get money from somewhere else. They want to actually help. And so this type of environment where we know where you are, you know where we are, you can come to us, that allows us to help them, give them precise information, and they'll be there.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Obviously, at the convention, we talk a lot about the myriad of issues that all of these respective laborers and unions face. But again, not only do we look at your athletes not just sometimes write a check, but we just see them as athletes and superstars, right? Talk to us, begin with you, Terri, about some of the everyday issues that you deal with as a union. I mean, we see you all reacting to the social justice issues, but what are some of the devils in the details? Because you deal with crazy management too, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, come on.
I think it is important to recognize that, and I was using this phrase earlier, they are mere mortals, right? They're human beings, and they are working moms like you guys. And So things that affect them, I mean, everything connected to the collective bargaining agreement. Yeah, the guys just finished theirs. I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous, right? Because I feels like I just negotiated ours, but ours is the 2020. We're 4 years in. Ours is a 2020 collective bargaining agreement. It would expire in 2027, but there's an opt-out. There's an opportunity for the league or for the players to opt out, to say, hey, we want out of this agreement early at the end of next season, at the end of the 2024 season. We want out of this agreement to negotiate all over again. Last time in 2018, when we were looking at that question, it really wasn't a question, right? It was, why would we stay in? It wasn't really, should we opt out? It was, why would we stay in? This collective bargaining agreement doesn't address anything about who we are as working women and women who are looking to start families, as working moms. So what's a big issue for us? What's a big issue for all of us? Salaries, right? Yeah, I mean, that's huge. That's huge for us. That's the issue that I'm dealing with. Also, how they travel. I mean, these are prima donnas, but they want to be treated with respect and they want to be treated well. And their bodies, go to work. They are putting in hours. And so, the guys, and Mark was saying, my son is a current NBA player. So I have this perspective, right? I see what the guys have. I see that world. I see what we have. I see our world. I don't compare. I don't judge too much. But I see what's possible. Positioned where I'm positioned, I see what's possible. And so for us, travel is a big issue. So I'd love to talk to the unions associated with the airlines and all of that, because we're going to need your help. We're going to look to mobilize and put a little pressure on the airlines, because there's some things that they can be doing. They can come to the table and have some conversations with the players, with the members of my union. But how they travel and salary, those really are top of mind, and those are our biggest issues.
Well, but on that point, before we leave that, and I think many people have seen the LSU women's team and Angel and the sisters, and I think she's been quoted as saying that someone like her remaining in college and getting the NIL money is still even more lucrative than going to the WNBA. Talk to us about that salary. Now, is that a question of ownership, investment? Some people are saying, well, WNBA isn't as popular as the NBA, but is that really it? What is it?
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna put an end to that tonight,
Come
okay?
on.
Right? Because we know if you put it on television, right, if you allow people to access the product, access the game, then they're gonna watch it. I'm gonna go back to 2020 again. And you know why? Because we came back in the bubble, all the sports came back, right? The NBA came back, NFL, MLB, everybody came back. Our viewership was through the roof. Why? Because you put us on television, everybody was home. It was 2020, y'all, you remember, everybody was home. And so you put the games on television, everybody's watching, they're binge watching, so everybody's watching. And again, our viewership was sky high. And we heard some of the other commissioners, and I'm not gonna name the sports, I'm not gonna call them out, but one of the other commissioners said, because their viewership ratings took a little dip, went low a little bit, and so we heard one of the commissioners complain, well, it's because we were competing with all these sports. We all came back at the same time. And I said, hold up, wait a minute. We play at this time of year all the time. We're up against the NBA, we're up against MLB, we're up against towards the latter half of our season. The NFL is coming back. Nobody gives us a break. So you want to talk about viewership and ratings and say, oh, but that's where they are, and that's the state of their business. No. Play fair, y'all, play fair. If you put us on television and people can access it, then they're tuning in and they're learning stories about these players who I say are the most accessible professional athletes out there. All you need to do is go to one game, wherever you are, go to one game, and you will love it. You will be transformed. And if you don't, okay, it's not for you. But I promise you, you're probably going to have a different reaction. You're going to love it. So the business is doing well, but you got to push back a little bit and say, in this family of leagues, I mean, when you look at businesses, right? When you look at, let's take Pepsi. Pepsi isn't going to let Frito-Lay or Doritos or Gatorade do bad, right? They're not going to let them struggle. They're going to put the resources in. They're going to invest in those brands, in the Pepsi company. Well, that's kind of what we expect. In the NBA enterprise, in that family of leagues, you have Basketball Africa, you have the G League, you have the NBA, you have the WNBA. None of them should ever be failing or struggling. You should put the investment in and the resources in.
What are some of the issues that the day-to-day labor issues that you're dealing with in the NBA?
Yeah. So first, I say based on my background as being a prosecutor at the local and federal level, when I came on board, I primarily focused on some of the day-to-day issues that the players were having with the league, whether it's suspensions, fines, on-court issues, off-court issues. Now, thankfully, I think the players, that has dissipated, so it's a much smaller percentage of my time. But there are still issues. There's still, I would say, everyone here, your everyday real life issues, the players have the same. It just becomes magnified because it's now public, it's on TV, and the employer is very image conscious, right? There's some places you work where they don't really care as much about what you're doing in your private life or on your own time. But for my members, it is a huge deal. And so trying to educate to prevent some of these issues from happening, and then when it does, trying to mitigate, trying to liaise with the player, the agent, the player's family, trying to explain to the league what's going on or what didn't happen. That's a constant thing. There's always something. Someone always does something that we have to address. I'd say on the bigger and more macro level, our players are really interested in expanding their ability to grow their investments, to be a part of of global business. And one of the interesting difficulties is because the NBA is so big and the governors are billionaires and have so many businesses all over the world, there are rules in place that limit what the players can do. Right. So, for example, in certain situations, if a owner has a certain percentage of a business, a player cannot also invest in that business. And in order to become a billionaire, you probably have a lot of investments in a lot of different businesses, and it makes it a little bit more difficult for the players. So, trying to just work with the league sometimes to open up some doors, or helping the players find other places to go. Right, we keep trying to tell the players it's nice to talk to the owners, but there are other places you can go to put your money. We're really focused on trying to find opportunities in Africa, because I think that obviously there's a tremendous wealth and opportunities there. As Terri mentioned, some of the travel unions here. I know there's some unions that are that work for some people in Africa. I'd love to talk to you guys. Our players are very, very interested in learning more about the continent. So I'd say on the macro level, it's expanding their footprint in the world. In the micro, it's still some of these everyday issues that everyone has. It gets blown way out of proportion sometimes for these athletes.
And some of those off-court issues also are blown out of proportion, obviously, because these are black athletes. Oh
yeah. No doubt. I mean, there's that undertone is absolutely still there. I mean, that doesn't go away because it's sports, right? That's a theme. What's interesting, in line with that and with social justice, I was recently talking to some people that we do social justice with, and they were saying that there was a player on a particular NBA team who is very active in the social justice space, and he essentially was called into the team's office, and in was the team governor, was the GM, and they were essentially chastising the player for not getting permission to engage in certain social justice activities. I wish he'd called me before that happened, because I would have been in the meeting with him and shut it all down. But it's that controlling mentality that even in that space, they're like, well, since you play for our team, if you're going to do social justice, it has to be through our channels, it has to be with our partners, it has to be for causes that we believe in. Luckily, the player is sophisticated enough where he was able to explain that, like, he's doing this on his own time. He's not doing it as player member of X team. He's just doing it as individual. And so he was able to politely but forcefully push back. But that undertone of control, and at the end of the day, they get to make all the rules because of who they are, that's still there. There's no doubt about that.
You know what, I was gonna, when you mentioned the Social Justice Council that we formed, so that was formed because the players said, we're not coming back. We're not going to play in the bubble unless there is a provision in the agreement that talked about social justice work. And so the league and the union, we came together and we created this joint social justice council. And it was supposed to be like, it was a big deal, right? Because it was the first of its kind and all of that. But what I recognized really pretty quickly was that we had to form our own committee within our organizational structure. Because so the way we are set up, we have a board of player reps, we have an executive committee, and then we have standing committees under that. Typically a CBA committee is an example of a standing committee. Well, we had to form another committee, we call them the Jedis. I think their name is so cool. So it's Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. And so the players on that committee are then the players who are the members of the Social Justice Council. And what's important about the Jedis is that they create their own kind of campaign, their own agenda of initiatives that they want to work on, and they can do that within the construct of the union, and they don't have to worry about it being compromised. They don't have to worry about getting permission, so to speak, right? What David is talking about. What they want to do, the social justice work, the advocacy work that they want to do through their union and on their own time, that's what we support. And then if there's some initiatives that we find, oh, you know, in collaboration with the league, this works, this makes sense, we can do that. But it was important for me to move really pretty quickly to form the Jedis, to make sure that, like I said, that they're not compromised, that we stay true to who we are and what we want to work on, and whatever position we want to take on whatever issue and whatever organizations we want to work with, we can do.
Was the league, and thank you again for your last comments too, David, I'm going to come back to that in a minute, was the league as supportive as the players were in getting Brittany Griner home?
Well, I could only stay in my lane and speak on the efforts of my members. Of course they were. Of course the league was very supportive, you know, but I am the executive director of the 144. That's what I call my members, 12 teams, so 12 on a team. And we were tweeting and posting every single day. We were doing interviews, we were talking, you know, on background, we were doing explicit interviews and giving statements every single moment that we could. And I think the league was doing its efforts too, and it had its own channels and direct contact with the State Department. There were things that we did kind of together, but I gotta tell you, the women of the 144, they were strong. They believed that they were going to get their sister home, and we just needed to do whatever we needed to do every single day. At one point they said, Terri, is this gonna matter? And I said, yes. Yes. My tweet, my retweet, is this gonna matter? Yes, it is. And fortunately, they trusted me enough to do that. And do I think that the efforts of Kathy Engelbert and the league and the teams, yes, they were all on it too. I think we were kind of all pushing at it from different directions. I just was in it with the players, and I can tell you they were committed.
And it definitely made a difference, indeed. David, you mentioned even dealing with, I guess, some of the individual teams. You were talking about, gave the anecdote about the player. So talk to us about how much of that is involved in your work. I mean, you have to deal with the league sometimes, the commissioner, and sometimes with individual owners too.
Yes, I'd say most of the time we're dealing with the league, right? So so when it comes to the collective bargaining agreement, we represent the players, the league represents the owners, and so that's when we sit at the table. We try and get the best deal for the players. They do that for the owners. We then write up the whole agreement. It was a 500-page book. It'll now probably be a 600-page book, and that's essentially like the rule book. And so then we then spend the rest of the time making sure that all the rules are being enforced, or if there are any tweaks. And then if a team has something unique they want to do, they'll go to the league. The league then talks to us. Same thing for a player. A player wants to do something that's outside the norm. They come to us, and we'll then discuss with the league. So most of the time, we deal directly with the league, and it's probably more efficient that way, right? Because the league they're essentially the head organization, right? And what's interesting is from the league perspective, they do a very good job of trying to control the narrative, right? So it's fascinating that, I mean, I'm not sure how they do it, but I'm sure they have some type of unofficial or official rule about teams shouldn't be making direct contact with the union, right? Because I think they want to keep all the messaging the same. Because not all teams are at the same level of sophistication. So every once in a while, this is one of the reasons why I like to go out and try and talk to the teams, or particularly go overseas and talk to some of the affiliate organizations, because sometimes they haven't had the last sip of the Kool-Aid, and so some of the talking points a little bit off, and that's when they start spilling some secrets. So sometimes you go talk to a team, and a team you got to remember these owners, they are billionaires, so they're used to doing whatever they want. And so every once in a while, if you're in the room, they might say some things that are a little bit different from lockstep with the league. So we try and talk to the teams, but most of the time they're good at shuffling the conversation back to the league to keep it all in line. But every once in a while you'll get a couple outliers, which is fine. I mean, for example, I'll tell you, I talk to, or some of the owners that I talk to, they're some of the more opinionated ones. That's why they talk to me, because they want their opinion to be heard. And it's just interesting to note the different perspectives across the board. I do think some of them care about social justice issues. I do think some of them are just completely terrified of it. And I do think others think it's a complete nuisance and they don't want it involved at all, right? So it goes across, which is kind of how society is in general, right?
Same case with you. I mean, how often do you have to deal with individual owners? And I guess, let me put it this way. If an owner is giving one of your members an issue, or there's some type of conflict, I mean, ultimately, you'd like to go to the league, I guess, and have them help intervene to fix that. That's part of the role that it's supposed to play, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, that's true. I have a similar but kind of different kind of take on it, or reaction to it, because I do believe in relationships, and that's what David is talking about, building those relationships at the team level, because you will hear what they have to say. I think our league is a little bit different. It's a little bit more decentralized. There is the league at the top that's kind of making these decisions, but sometimes, again, because of the relationships you have with the teams, you can kind of negotiate your way through, or talk about a situation with a particular player. I did want to mention something about Black Lives Matter on the court, because this is kind of like a team level, league level kind of thing. So the league came to us recently and said, well, the governors are talking about the Black Lives Matter decal on the court. And I said, okay, well, what's the conversation? And they said, well, some are looking to remove it. And I was like, really? Because last I checked, this was still an issue, and Black lives do still matter, but okay, so what are we talking about? And they said, well, it costs a lot of money to have the decal on the court. And I was like, wow, really? Well, so when they start with the money thing, that's when you got to keep asking questions, right? It's like, okay, so how much does it cost? Well, tens of thousands of dollars. Really? Okay. And the teams pay that, or the league pays that? Well, it actually is paid by the league. And I said, okay, so why are the teams complaining? right? And then I heard, well, they really want to see logo woman more prominently featured on the court. And I was like, okay. And then we've heard, isn't it time to move on? Yeah, my players had the same reaction. Our members had the same reaction, like, what? What are we talking about here? And so what the league's position was to, push it to the teams and say, have the conversations with the players. And so I've been talking to the members saying, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to do something else? Do you want to show up or be represented on this issue someplace else in a different way? Like, think about what that is, and maybe the tens of thousands of dollars that it costs to put the decal on the court, maybe that gets directed, right, to a charity of your choice. Or do you just want to say, no, Black lives matter, Black lives still matter, and it should be on the court? I think it was really a prominent statement for the WNBA, for the NBA, to have that on the court. And so what does removing that do? What does that mean? I don't know. I really don't. Like, I'm really posing that as a question, and I told that to my members. I said, think about it. That's the locker room conversation I want you to have and come to consensus on. But if you're thinking maybe you want to show up on this issue in a different way, then maybe the tens or thousands of dollars that it costs for the decal, like I said, goes to a charity. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say that it reminded me of another reason why for us we tend to do it at the league levels, because for our players, oftentimes when it gets to the team level, when we're not in the locker room, the team has the ability, because they're with the players every day, to lean on them a little bit, particularly if you're not the superstar. Like if you're a rookie, you're on the bench, you're trying to make the team. I mean, it's a whole thing between voluntary versus mandatory. Like, you can call something voluntary, but you're on that team, you don't want that extra stress or pressure. So a lot of times in these, what we call like soft issues, like social justice, the teams just have the ability to just kind of lean on them a little bit, and it just gets difficult. So if we can get it done at the league level, so it's mandatory, this has to happen, or something can't happen, then like at least the player has something, has a piece of paper to, like, look, team, you have to do this. And that's the power of the union, right? That's where we come in. We can kind of relieve that pressure and say, don't worry, like, we'll carry this for you.
You also mentioned, David, some of the off-court issues. David also, folks, deals with, when folks want to take disciplinary action or that type of thing. And it's important to have someone like us in that role, and I'm not going to put him on the spot because there's a matter now he really can't talk about. But sometimes the media will judge or prejudge and therefore create a prejudice toward a certain player or some publicity, right? And then that becomes a big public issue. It's his job to help. So sometimes, I've been seeing a lot of people on social media talking about the brother in Memphis, even some of us. What is going on? So, but we have to, if we all know what it's like to be in a collective situation, sometimes we need to press pause and be sure we have all the information and that this young person is being represented and treated fairly and not guilty rather than being presumed innocent.
Yeah,
right?
No, absolutely.
And I'm not trying to get you to say too much.
No, I hear you.
But,
I hear you.
We just need to.
No, 100%. I think, you described it perfectly. I think in this age of everyone has an ability everyone has an opinion and ability to get it out there, it's this rush to get your opinion out there regardless of information. And I think a lot of times for our athletes, that's magnified. And oftentimes in these situations, the initial reactions and opinions they're based on little to no information. And then unfortunately, some of us, we'll pick up on that and we will perpetuate some of that information and we don't have all the facts, right? And I think one of the things that we talked about is being supportive of us, right? Even when we're not perfect or we've fallen down, we should continue to be supportive of us, right? Like leave it to everyone else to tear us down. Like we already know they're going to do that, right? There's already enough people to tear people down. We should continue to be supportive of us because it means a lot. Like the athletes do pay attention. It does make a difference. Our athlete, the average age is probably like 22, 23. In my opinion, they care too much about all that social media stuff, but they do listen, they do watch, and it is hurtful when people like them are saying things and acting as though they've lost faith in them. I know people like to talk about things and everyone can have your opinions, that's great, but just remember it does have an impact, and just because these guys and the women are successful athletes and they're financially successful, they're still at times fragile human beings that have emotions and need encouragement, and being torn down, it isn't helpful.
David, I'll stay with you for a minute because I know you also have been involved in the transition now to sports gambling, and that's become ubiquitous. What does that mean for the union, for labor? What's that all about? Yeah, I mean, for us, it's very terrifying. It's going to be a problem. I think. I mean, look. At first, we made a push to try and make as much have an ability to have direct financial gains from this increase in sports betting. Because the way it works is you have these companies, they'll come in, these betting shops, they'll come into communities and say, hey, we're going to promise you all these jobs, et cetera, and sometimes they deliver, sometimes they don't. But betting in general is harmful to our communities overall. It doesn't help. And it's going back to these private companies. That's all it is, right? And when oftentimes, because I did a lot of lobbying going from state to state to state, advocating on behalf of the players, and the governments would say, oh, we love it because we're going to get more tax money, et cetera. All they're going to do is they're going to move the tax, they're going to move the money from one thing to another. So if the education was going to get $5 million, they're not going to add the extra $5 million. They're going to take that $5 million and put it somewhere else. So it's not really doubling the benefit to the community. So for us, I'll give you an example. I have had situations where I've had to deal with the league, and because there's been unusual betting on particular players for particular games, right? Like, oh, why was there so much betting on whether or not this person was going to score 10 points or more, right? And so now the player has to have an interview. I'm there, prep the player, because the league wants to understand, were they trying to fix the game? Were they giving information? And everything has always worked out, thankfully, but what's going to happen, I predict at some point in time, a player just randomly might be talking to his or her friend or family member, and be like, damn, my ankle is still hurting. It's not going to be a good game tonight, right? Maybe someone was in the other room. Someone heard that. Now they go and take that information. They bet on that information. They bet a lot, right? Sets off some alarms. And now this player's getting jammed up, and they were just talking about how their day was going to go, right? And so now what might happen, now there might be discipline for that person, that player with the league. You go back to the media part. Now if this actually comes out, now that player's reputation is tarnished. If there's marketing deals, those deals might be taken away. So to me, there's a lot of negatives around the gambling. On the other side, I mean, there are going to be endorsement opportunities, so they can be now, because of the new CBA, they can be the face of Caesars or the face of Bally's, et cetera. But it's going to be dangerous. I think from the general union perspective, I guess you could make the argument that if they're entities, so they're bringing jobs, so you have to bring in union jobs, so therefore that's always a good thing. But we have to make sure that that's the case, right? If they are going to be allowed, all those other things have to come with it to support the unions. That's right. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm sitting here about to blow up, okay?
Okay.
The reason for my anxiety is here.
Let's get Clay.
The most troubling portion that we're talking with each other about inside of our communities is that the face that we see that's pushing forward the gambling piece are our folks in sports. So our communities have folks who are now gambling in that arena. So the habit of betting has become very acceptable because some of the idols that they see or players that they respect are the ones that talk in this game. And stick with me now, I'm from the country, I can't make it real plain, but I want to make it so that you can understand exactly what I'm saying, all right? Our folks are concerned that those who are talking more about gambling in various kinds of ways, FanDuel or whatever the hell it is, because I'm old, I can't keep up with all the names that they have, all right? But our young people see it and it's like, okay, well, they're doing it. You know, let's see if we can make some money in this way. That's harmful.
I
And
agree.
that's troubling to our communities.
No, I agree, and thank you for saying that, because I've never heard that, right? Because so far, current NBA players have not been allowed to be the face of DraftKings, Caesars, et cetera. We just signed a new CBA, and they can be going forward. So they probably will be because they're pretty marketable. So in the past, it's just been the retired player. I think like Kevin Garnett's been in a couple commercials, et cetera. But to your point of if their celebrity is going to result in more gambling, our people feel more comfortable, it's going to be more harmful. That's a conversation we should have, because and this is where it's interesting from the union perspective, right? Because on the one hand, we pushed, and I'm glad we got the ability for the players to make money doing this, because our argument was they're already going to be harmed because because gambling is going to be harmful to them overall, and they can't own betting shops. So I was like, if you're going to get the negative, at least we'll get some of the positive. But to your point now, I mean, that's a good conversation. I think that there is stuff that we can do in the communities. There are like service announcements we can give. We can like find out the communities that you're particularly worried about and figure out the players that would be best suitable, and just and talk and have a conversation. Because I agree, and I definitely think our players would not want to think that they're like causing harm. I'm 100% sure. Like they don't want that to happen at all. And so if there's a way that we can help that, then we would be all in.
Thank you for raising that, Cleo. We're going to go to the mics in a minute if folks want to start lining up. But as we do that, one other issue, obviously, and you all may already be outspoken on this, and I just may be missing it because I've been in so many different places. The W, I like that. Clearly, in the past couple of years and since the reversal of Roe, I mean, we're seeing an even greater and ongoing deadly attack on women's bodily autonomy. You all speaking out about that, doing some things with that?
Yeah, absolutely. There was, for the first time, we were able to join a coalition of organizations like Sister Song and Planned Parenthood, and do a full-page ad I think that ran in the New York Times a couple years ago about reproductive rights. And so the Jedis have a campaign this year that's all about women's health issues. And within that umbrella, there are different spokes or buckets, if you will, of issues. So mental health, maternal health, reproductive rights, and the cancers that affect women. And so you're going to see the W players mobilizing in lots of those areas on those topics. What happened with Roe, I think I'm going to say things that we all feel, right? Just set us back, just put us in the wrong direction, and has you just scratching your head of like what to do and how to make sense of it. But the players are just going to continue to mobilize like they've been doing, talk about the efforts that we all need to be doing, at the state level, at the federal level, to make the kind of changes and see the kind of changes that we need, because that never should have happened.
All right, we've got some questions. Let's go here first. Folks, and by the way, please, everyone, a question. You know, folks don't do that no more, right? We like to get up and do our own. So please, one question, go right to the sentence, go right to the question. Please, I'm going to intervene.
Better call on this.
All right, go right ahead.
Mike J, hello. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Let's go Heat.
No, for their benefit, your name, where you from, what union, all that.
I'm from Miami, obviously, right? White hot. The game starts in like right now. But I'm Fed Ingram from the AFT. I represent teachers all over the country. 1.7 million.
I can't see with the light, Fed. I'm sorry, the light
There
shine.
you go.
There you are, man. What's
all
up?
Good. Listen, this organization rightly recognizes under 40 a lot because we're always trying to look to the future. And your members are under 40. For the most part, LeBron and Unionists excluded, right? But what we like, what I'd like to see, your guys are superheroes and your young ladies are superheroes. Is there any way to hook up with our under 40 and your under 40 so that your members and our members can be empowered? Your members will understand the benefit of having an organization like this. Like we just saw a superhero, Bill Lucy. All of the NBA and WNBA people should know who Bill Lucy is because that's why we're here. And then, vice versa, is there any way that we can help you all? We fight bread and butter issues too, right? Social justice is one of the things that we do. But we fight the same issues, the grievances, the shop stewards, working conditions that you all fight. Let's hook up and let's get these young people to understand the value of collective action together because you all hooking up with us will make us more powerful, but us hooking up with you will make you more powerful too.
The short answer and the easy answer is yes.
Yeah. So listen, I'm not the lead. We got all kinds of leaders in here. I just want to put it out there because we got some bad under 40 folks in this group who really could use a boost, a guidance, and we could actually train your guys about union labor, about history, about those things, and that will empower them to know what their rights are as well.
Listen,
so let's do it. Let's do it. Cleola and Terry, I just put it in the room because our young people matter, okay?
That's the reason. That is the reason why we are here.
Yeah.
That is the reason why we are here. This is the start of that. Yeah. Absolutely.
And let's go Heat, baby. If you're from Massachusetts, we don't want to hear from you.
Okay, so you're going to have to go sit down with that.
Yes, right over. We'll go side to side. Yes.
Rob Howard, the San Diego chapter CBTU, former utility worker, now with UDW. I was recently laid off, 30 years in an industry that's pretty much dying, the energy industry, as far as union employees. But the question I have for you is there a way? Because you talked about your Jedi. I'm from the country. I'm from Memphis, born and raised, Jackson and Hollywood, by the way. Mine is Jedi. It's justice, equity, black inclusion, and it's around doing the work of economic development. We do a lot of charity, but I'm looking at coming from a standpoint of you all making your voice heard around ensuring that there are black contractors and black union folks in all the facilities and cities that you work in, making that type of marriage to support exactly what he was talking about. Look, we can help you if we know what you need. Because trust me, if we have an opportunity to help you, we are there. So thinking about economic empowerment, because when the charity goes away, but I help some black-owned businesses grow and unionize, when the charity goes away, those businesses are still there. They're in the community. And so just shifting the paradigm of how to think about how we help our communities. So that's what I was thinking about.
We all agree. I think once again, like the devil is in the details, right? And so what I'd say is, if we have an economic empowerment issue, and which is all over the country, right? But we're going to take one particular state or one particular town. Let's figure out. For us, we have to figure out the players that are most suitable for that to be like some type of connection, right? Because I'll tell you right now, if there's a player that plays for the Knicks, but he's actually from LA, like he doesn't have that, and he just got to the Knicks, he might not have that connection to New York to feel comfortable speaking up on those issues in New York, right? So the players are very, I mean, and Terry knows this a lot better than I do. They are highly skilled individuals in this sport, right? And they're also, like everyone, they're also very proud individuals, and they're used to excellence, right? So they going outside their comfort zone, I think, is oftentimes even harder for them than the average person, because they're just used to being the best at this one thing, right? Or this one kind of sport. And so if you're going to ask them to immediately speak on an issue, it's just not going to work, and they're going to run away. So the way to do that is we have to collectively start with, like, reminding them and educating them about union. I mean, we have to remind them about our union, right? Like, and Terri has to remind her players, probably not as much, about her union and about what we have to do. A lot of times I would go around having to educate our folks on union activities. Oftentimes I'll tell the story that a lot of times the players, whenever they stay and they travel, they always stay at the Ritz or the Four Seasons, and I have to remind them, but for the union, you'd be staying at the Motel 6, right? Like, you don't get those benefits because of the kindness of the hearts of the governors. It's because we make them do it, right? So we have to educate them about what we do. We have to educate them about what you guys do, educate them about the specific causes, and then we can do these things. So we're all in, but it's step by step.
Well, but I just want to say something real quick on that, because what I heard you say something else too, and you alluded to it when you talked about the gambling and being sure even in that profession we're represented. So, for example, you all are dealing with billionaires. Mm-hmm. We got to figure out a way, right? If I heard you correctly, that when it comes to these teams and these stadiums, and everybody's building a new stadium all the time, right? Amen? That we are in that too, right? Is that?
Because what happens is people forget that the work that our members do, AI can't take away what I do with my hands.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so if we're gonna bring our communities up, because trust me, once AI take away them jobs that them middle class folks are doing, they're coming after the jobs that we do, because people don't realize a lot of the history part of it.
Gotcha. Right. And to that point, these is not just the folks on the court, but it's the folk behind the scenes that are holding up that infrastructure with their hands. Yes, ma'am. Real quick for me.
Hi, Evelyn Evans, Rochester Chapter CBTU. I'm an IUE CWA member, and as what I would call you guys in our world, staff reps. Did you do staff rep in other areas, or you went straight to the NBA? Started in the NBA.
So I'll tell you, I have a player, her mom calls me the union lady. So yeah, that's really my title. No, this was my first union job. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, because I wanted to get my staff rep into the NBA so I could be her assistant and help her.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir, real quick. And then the last one will come over here, yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alain Barrett. I'm from New York City. I'm a director for intergovernmental affairs for the New York City Public Schools, but I'm also the men's chair for the New York City chapter, the Black Men's Chair. Thank you all for being here. I'm also a union delegate as well. Quick thing that I wanted to ask you is, in reference to mental health, every year for the past 2 years, me and another union member have put together a Black Men's Mental Health and Wellness Conference at Adelphi University, where we bring together all Black male and female therapists, psychotherapists together. I would love to invite you all. Obviously, we're in a union hall, so we want to make sure that folks have access to those particular jobs. I know that there's therapists and psychotherapists in NBA, but the question is are they culturally responsive to those players? We always see this idea of perpetuating this idea that Black men are criminal. And I guess my last question to you is what is the criteria for your organizations to work with nonprofits? And the reason why I ask that, and as the committee chair for Black men in New York City, it seems like a lot of these corporations and organizations are working with nonprofits that have a casual contempt for Black men. Mm-hmm. And I want to really key in on that, because there were certain folks that were put on the NBA hardwood that literally say that they're about supporting black men when our bodies are cold, but then they're on the internet with casual contempt and saying things that perpetuate stereotypical variables that are coming out that leads to our soft genocide. So tell me what the criteria is, because I think there's a lot of nonprofits that don't deserve to work. I'm tired of black men being a commodity.
Yeah. I mean, real quick, I say for the mental health stuff, just make sure we have your contact information. There might be, based on the time, the schedules, I think we have a pretty good network of mental health clinicians, and I think we might be able to support. When it comes to the nonprofits, in our space, we have our own foundation. We also help players with their foundations and their philanthropy. But please, if you think that if you see the NBA or any teams that are engaged with nonprofits, that you have information that you think that they're not really who they're supposed to be, then let us know, because we need all of you, because we don't know everything.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. You could turn $10 into $250. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/fan and use code FAN. That's code FAN at prizepicks.com/fan.
Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
After the holidays, a little cash goes a long way. The Chime checking account has tons of benefits to help, like fee-free overdraft up to $200 for eligible members, no monthly fees, and thousands of fee-free ATMs. You can even get paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Sign up for Chime today at chime.com/goals24. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply. Access to direct deposits up to 2 days early depends on the timing of the submission of the payment file from the payer.
My name is Aaron McCormick. I represent the University of Michigan Professional Nurses Council by way of National Nurses United. So one thing that was on my mind, knowing that you guys are union, is about injuries and players and even mental health. One thing that we're supporting heavily is Medicaid for all. We know that you guys, at a certain point in their careers, they get lifetime health insurance. But what about those players that don't make it, which is a lot? What about those players that go overseas and have to come back and, health insurance, things of that nature? Have there been any talks within your union to support such bills to get, not only NBA players, but it's everyone? So has there been talks in your circles about those type of bills to help everyone, unions, and America?
Well, bills it's supporting health care for all, universal health care, Medicaid for all, anything like that?
Often. I felt like you were talking to me about players who go overseas, because that's because they don't make enough money in the W. Yeah, so their off-season opportunities sometimes over in Europe are a lot more lucrative. Yes, and then sometimes they get injured there, and that affects their status or ability to play. Yeah, all the time we're having those conversations. Absolutely.
I would say quickly. I mean, we don't have those conversations, but if we should talk, because we are interested in advocating when there's things that we think resonate with us and our membership, and sometimes we don't hear about certain issues. That one is not particularly on our radar because our players have amazing health care.
Don't worry, I'm going to put it on their radar.
Let's thank our panelists, folks. Terri, Carmichael-Jackson, David Foster. Give them another round of applause. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. As always, perform an act of kindness on behalf of an elder or young person. Write a letter to a sister or brother who just so happens to find her or himself incarcerated. Offer libations to the ancestors upon whose sturdy shoulders we all now stand. And above all, give thanks to the God of your understanding by whatever name you call her and him. All God asks of us is that we give each other love. Thanks for giving MIP love. And please remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.